after puberty.
I agree with that. I'm not
So
disputing that. 100%.
if Mary was 12 years old, which is possible,
yes, it is possible.
okay,
My point was,
she would
you said it was
have married.
Yep.
No, it
That's
was,
all I
it's
want.
not-
That's all I want to make clear.
not
No,
this.
that's okay.
That's it.
That's okay.
But I'm with the Sheikh.
Yeah, that's fine.
I'm with
Because
you.
they said that was here. He said this was the cultural thing, the context.
Yeah,
between
cultural,
age,
yes, I agree.
possible between age 12 and 16.
Yes, I agree with that.
But the thing is, it could have been earlier. It could have been earlier.
It could be.
Let's
Yeah, it depends.
agree. It's not in the Bible,
It
right?
could be earlier.
Okay, that's fine. But yeah, carry on. Sorry. Go on.
Yeah. So the point is what I'm saying. So when you are using again your own morality of now, and then you wanted to go back in the history to say no, the girl shouldn't be married at that time or at that age, we cannot use that standard because every time and every time and every culture has different, and as well the nature of people as well is different. The nature of people in Egypt maybe is different than the nature of people in Europe, and so on and so forth.
Two different situations because there was no penetration with Mary. Remember, that's my difference.
But according
With
to you,
Aisha, she was
but
penetrated.
according to you, the penetration happened to Mary. According to you,
How?
later on after she gave birth to Jesus.
Okay, that's after. We're talking with Jesus' birth compared to what the Prophet did with Aisha.
Yeah, but after she gave birth, that she had this, which means within the age, again, still within that age, if we wanted to consider that cultural aspect, still that's why you cannot use this.
Okay, no, fair enough.
Yeah.
Okay. At what age did God decree that people could get married in the Bible? At what age?
There is actually no specific.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So they could be 12.
I don't know. Well, I mean, unless I'm wrong, tell me the reference.
No, I'm asking,
I don't know.
Right.
I don't know.
So it's not the case that God said in the Bible the age of consent
Oh, yeah, of
for guys and girls should be at 16.
Yeah.
He didn't say that.
Yeah.
Okay. So
Yeah, puberty. Yeah.
Puberty. So if you had what we would call two boys and girls, say they were 14 and 15. And got married and consummated the marriage, that would be acceptable to God because He hasn't decreed after puberty a particular age. But in today's Northwest European liberal secular societies, that would be considered wrong. Yeah. But you see how relative morality is. But you see, from God's point of view, He hasn't decreed in the Bible a particular age. So do we follow our secular Western or do we follow God?
That's fair enough.
Did we do that? The issue, presumably the age of Aisha is behind this as well, to do with this. The same with the age of Aisha. The Prophet, upon him be peace, was married to her at a certain age, but he didn't have physical relations there for several years after that. Why did he wait? He waited because she became a woman at that time, as it was understood, at puberty. And then the marriage to an adult female, Aisha, was perfectly valid and legitimate. So do we universalize our Western ideas and impose them on all times and culture throughout history, throughout the world? Or do we recognize we've got a particular set of values here which are not followed by God's prophets or by the Bible or anyone else?
And as well adding to this, throughout the history, by the way, brother, one second. By the way, throughout the history, when people who criticize the Prophet, peace be upon him, and criticize Islam, they never brought this matter except recently.
Yes.
With our latest standard of morality or whatever. For example, in the past, debates happened between Muslim and Christian, things happened even in Western countries. No one brought up the issue which they are aware of, because it was something which is not something of their concern at that time. It's not something which is concerning. But later on, here, nowadays, during our age, that's different. So that's why we are not using our own standard.
I think we ought to, if I may, we ought to stress that as Muslims living in the West, we must accept the law of the land.
Exactly.
We don't define the law of the land by committing what the West would consider to be wrong or a crime, simply because we are allowed to in Sharia, that we have to acknowledge the custom of the people and the law we're living in.
Absolutely.
But in other
not just
places,
the law, even the customs of the people. Not just the law. Even if the law is allowed, even the customs of the people, we have to adapt the customs of the people. Meaning, even if the law allows us, even if the law in this country allow us, for example, allow our girls and boys to marry at the age of 16, and we know the custom of the people that they are not ready to get married, we will follow the custom.
So we want to reassure people, because some people think, because the Sharia in certain circumstances allows these things, therefore Muslims are going to break the law in the West.
No, at all.
It is in the Sharia, as you say, the custom is a legal entity in itself.
Exactly.
Sharia.
Absolutely.
So we must respect the law, but in other places, other times, we can behave differently.
Exactly. And for example, by the way, brother, just also adding to this, which is the point that you mentioned. Like, for example, in the United States, there are some states allow girls to be married at the age of 13. Yeah.
Well, maybe
in some states in the United States. I don't know that now. Still, the Muslims who live there, the custom of the people is not the norm for everyone to get married at that age. Still, the custom of the Muslims as well to wait for their daughters until they grow up, until they are mature enough to handle a family, to look after children, etc. Even though with the age, by the law allows it, still not necessarily that the customs and the habit of the people, is viable at that time. But that's a good point. Now, the next point which we need to bring, since we talked about Islam. We said to you we want to talk about Christianity, about the Trinity, yeah? And that's the key thing which is on our discussion door. And there is Brother Paul, may Allah bless him, he is more advanced in terms of knowledge about the Bible more than me. So we'll talk about the Trinity. Now in Orthodox Christian, the Coptic Orthodox Christian, they have a concept. They said, I will say it in Arabic and then everything. لاهوته لا يفارق ناسوته طرفة عين. Meaning, the divinity of Jesus and the body of the flesh of Jesus, it doesn't depart from each other even in a blink of an eye, and that's a unique thing in the Orthodox Coptic.
I've never heard that.
Yeah, you could find it.
No, I don't believe you guys.
So they use this term, his divinity lahutu, and nasutu, which is his flesh. It doesn't depart from each other even for a blink of an eye. Do you accept this? Do you want to check this?
No, I believe you. I'm just saying, I've never heard.
Are you a Coptic Christian?
I mean, I was baptized Coptic, but the Christian I call myself, I just follow Christ. There is no.
So
I'm not Coptic. I'm
right, he's probably more evangelical now.
He's
no longer following.
So you're not following Coptic.
I don't follow Coptic Protestant.
You
I just follow the Bible. That's it.
Okay.
So evangelicals tend to follow whether you know that or not Augustine and the Latin.
I don't care about
tradition, not the Coptic tradition.
All right.
So that argument is not relevant to where he's at.
So you don't believe in this?
I've never heard.
Because that's total nonsense.
I've never heard it.
Now here, so you believe Jesus, that his body and his soul departed from each other, yeah? You believe this?
The body and the soul.
Yeah. When he died.
Yeah. I mean,
At the crucifixion.
the divinity and the soul.
The soul and the body separate.
Yeah, the divinity, the divineness and the soul and the body, they separate. Yes.
So here, when Jesus was created, or when he came here.
Jesus wasn't created.
Okay. So he came here. So we are here to debate this. Adding to this, which we found it strange in the Bible, which is the history of the Gospels. Yeah.
I don't know. Listen, I'm going to be honest. The history, the canons, the text variants, I still haven't studied that. So I'm going to be very, very honest.
Then how you say you Christian? You just blind follower of Christianity?
No. Hear me out. I've just got into apologetics. I've just got into studying the divinity of Christ. I've just started to study the Trinity. If you ask me right now to defend the Trinity or explain it, I'm going to be honest, I can't. And I'll be lying if I sat here in front of my cameras and said, yeah, I can explain the Trinity. I'll be like a fool, right? I'm being intellectually honest, and I'm telling you, I've only just started to study.
Okay.
So I can only talk about what I know, right?
All right. So you don't know about the history of the Bible at all.
I know little bits about the history.
And about the Gospels, for example, Gospel of John.
Yes. What about it? It was written. Some say 60, some say to 90 AD after Christ. So
was it the truth?
Usually seen as written towards the end of the first century.
Yeah, the end of the first century.
Okay.
Which is 90 AD. I wasn't lying.
All right. So there's the whole Gospel or patches of it?
No, that's just John.
Gospel of John, the whole Gospel was written during that time, or patches of it?
Well, scholars tend to think that it went through various editions. As different sources. That's an academic question. I'm not sure if we want to go into that yet. It's not written by an eyewitness. It's funny, none of the Gospels are written by people who we can identify. I know it says the Gospel according to Matthew, Mark, and John. But if you read them, like Matthew, for example,
John's in
it's in the third person.
Yeah, I know.
So if Matthew was actually writing it and he actually met Jesus, it actually says in one part that Matthew suddenly appears in the story, but you wouldn't know that this was the alleged author because he never says, hi, it's me, or I met Jesus, or we encountered this amazing miracle. So because it never claims to be by an eyewitness or by a named individual, scholars tend to think they're anonymous, and that goes for all of them. Even John doesn't mention John. So we don't know who wrote them, we don't know where they were written, by whom and when, or to whom. It's scholarly guesswork.
I mean, I would say that Dr. Bart Ehrman and a few other scholars disagree with that statement, but everyone's entitled to.
Actually, Bart Ehrman agrees with that statement, very much so.
Bart Ehrman agrees on one thing, that the Gospels come from the first century. Yes, he agrees. Yes, he agrees. We don't know who wrote them.
He goes they're anonymous.
Yeah, I agree. We don't know who wrote them, but they are from the first century, the time of Jesus.
Yes,
right. He says
not the time of Jesus. After the time of Jesus.
In their lifetimes. not Jesus, the authors, because whoever wrote them, is talking about something they have seen or something they have talked to an eyewitness.
No, but they're not saying that. They're not saying that they have
So where
seen
did they
it.
get the information?
You agreed that they're third person.
Yeah, they're third person.
So it's not eyewitness.
No, it's not. No, I'm saying they got it from eyewitnesses. That's what I'm saying.
How do you know that?
Well, where did they get the information from?
I can answer that question.
Yeah, go on, lovely.
Right,
That's
okay.
what you teach me.
That's his idea. That's his idea.
Right. I'll leave you the standard academic understanding.
Of course, yeah.
The arguments for it are something else. So the standard view is the earliest gospel written is Mark.
Yeah. Oh, I thought it was Luke.
Mark.
Okay, so Mark's
is the earliest.
Okay.
For a whole bunch of interesting reasons. And then Matthew and Luke use Mark. They basically took Mark, edited him, and added, in Matthew and Luke's case, a nativity narrative, the birth of Jesus, and they added resurrection appearances, which are not in Mark.
Okay.
I know in your Bible it has them, but they were added in the 2nd century.
Fair enough. Okay.
Okay, yeah. and many modern Bibles actually have footnotes, and saying
this was yeah,
exactly.
Yeah,
so Matthew and Luke used Mark, but they did some interesting things. They didn't just copy Mark and add their bits. Matthew, for example, edited, changed, corrected Mark when he disagreed with him, and he did disagree with him on some really important matters. For example,
Who, Matthew?
Matthew. Yeah, Matthew disagrees with Mark. So he changes Mark. So, for example, in Mark chapter 7, there's a comment which Mark makes, whoever he is, that Jesus declared all foods clean. So you can eat what you like. You can eat pork, anything. This is what Mark understands Jesus to be teaching. But in Matthew's version, he deletes that verse. He omits it. He has the rest of the paragraph, but that verse he eliminates. And another example, in Luke's Gospel, when he copies Mark, he doesn't agree with what Mark says, because in a place in Mark chapter 10, verse 45, he has Jesus say about his own death, that the Son of Man came to die and give his life as a ransom for many. Yeah? So Jesus' death is an atonement for sin, according to Mark. That's what he has Jesus say. Now, Luke doesn't agree with that. Why? Because it has the same passage, and he deletes that verse. You won't find it in Luke, because for Luke, Jesus did not die as an atoning sacrifice. He died as a martyr.
Fair enough.
As a prophet of God who was basically captured by his enemies and who was martyred. So Luke corrects Mark in some ways because he doesn't agree with him. This means several things to me. That these guys didn't see Mark as the word of God. They didn't see him as always historically accurate. They sometimes saw him as teaching wrong things. So they corrected him on matters of Jewish law, on matters of the meaning of Jesus' death, and on other things. I could go on. I mean, I don't want to bore everyone, but I could go on and on about this. So this is basic. If you went to Oxford, Cambridge, Harvard, Yale, Sorbonne, University, but you would learn this stuff. I did at university in here as well. And when you check it out and look at the detailed reasons, it seems pretty good case. It's not like this is not science, by the way. It's not like in a laboratory where you can have a scientific experiment and prove things and repeat them. It's not science. History isn't like that.
I know.
But it's how we make sense. Why did Luke copy this passage in Mark, say Mark 10,
leave out this
and leave out that verse? Why did Matthew copy this passage in Mark and leave out that verse? And with that and other evidence, you kind of get a sense of what Matthew was about, what Luke was about, what Mark was about, and what John was about. And they didn't always agree, actually. So scholars tend to think that the original historical Jesus thought of himself as what? What's the main thing that scholars in the West think Jesus was historically? How did he view himself?
Divine, put it that way.
As a prophet.
As a prophet, okay, fair enough.
Not as divine. The consensus is that scholars don't tend to think Jesus thought of himself as Yahweh. He didn't see himself as God. He saw himself as a prophet and a Messiah. And remarkably, or not so remarkably for us Muslims, that's exactly what the Quran says. The Quran gets it exactly right.
And Messiah, and he's the Messiah.
It right. And Christians today arguably have a different view. Okay,
of course,
so we as Muslims follow the historical Jesus of history, and there's a remarkable convergence between what Western scholars are saying and what the Quran says about Jesus.
That was an interesting statement you just said.
Okay,
you said you as Muslims follow the historical Jesus, right?
Yes, the real Jesus, the true Jesus. Yeah.
So the true Jesus.
The historical Jesus, you do realize was crucified, right?
I see.
Which you guys disagree with.
Yes.
How does that work?
Okay.
Just as an opinion, not an argument. I just want to know your opinion.
Well, there are lots of reasons why. Firstly, I had that view because God himself has said so in his revelation in the Quran.
Fair enough. Yeah.
So it's not my own idea. This comes from God's revelation. But then when we ask questions, assuming that is the case, how do we view the Gospels? How do we view the New Testament?
Yeah.
What's interesting is that the Gospels are not as you may or may not agree, they're not eyewitness testimony.
Yeah, I'm with you on that.
So when Mark says Jesus was crucified, that's not an eyewitness.
No, but
saying
we're
that.
not. I said history. So
Yeah,
Bart Ehrman
okay.
and all of these scholars,
Okay,
let's
all
take
right.
it from their point
So
of view. Let's forget about
what
the
are,
Bible.
excellent.
Yeah, yeah.
What are our first century historical sources? In terms of archaeology, what archaeological evidence do we have that Jesus was crucified? Archaeological evidence.
We have okay. I don't know about the archaeology,
Okay.
but I know we have accounts like Josephus, for instance.
Josephus,
yeah, which is
okay.
a first century historian,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Who mentions the crucifixion of Jesus.
Yes.
We know that it was around 33 AD, and Pontius Pilate was governor, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And Tiberius was the emperor of Rome. We have that, right? So it's. I would say it's a good assumption to say that based on the evidence that we have, and scholars
And what does
say
the
that
Quran say about the crucifixion of
see,
Jesus?
that's the thing.
Let's see how this tallies with Josephus.
Because the Quran says that he was replaced. Is that true?
No, it doesn't.
He wasn't replaced. See, that's what I
It
mean.
does say. He said it appears to them.
so
That's all.
It
okay.
appeared to the Jews that he had been crucified.
Right.
The appearance was given. Josephus, who by the way was not present during Jesus' ministry,
Yeah, I know.
reports hearsay, I would suggest,
Yeah.
apparently plausible hearsay.
Yeah.
The Romans did execute a lot of people.
They did,
It's
yeah.
certainly plausible that Jesus could have been executed, but God knows the inner reality, the secret, the truth about history.
I can't doubt that.
Josephus, who wasn't present, neither were any other New Testament writers present. Paul, for example, was converted several years later.
Yeah.
He
We
wasn't
have John,
present.
who was at the foot of the cross, though.
But John, okay, but
That's
John's Gospel.
listen to this.
Okay, let's check this evidence.
Yeah.
Who's the author of John's Gospel?
Well, see, we don't know.
We don't know.
Yeah, exactly.
Where was it written?
Around
When was
90
it written?
Around 90 AD.
How do we know that?
What do you mean? I just said it was around 90 AD. And you didn't tell me. I was
No,
wrong.
I agree that Bart Ehrman and scholars say
Yeah,
that.
that's
But
what I'm going
asking
based on
why.
what-
But why do they say
I don't
that?
know. I mean, it's based off what they've done.
It's not because they have a carbon-dated manuscript from 90 AD. It's that they see it as the last gospel to be written for a whole bunch of other internal reasons to do with the gospels
fair
themselves. But John is not in any way. If you had you see, we have a hadith in Islam, reports of the Prophet, and we only accept those that are Sahih hadith.
Sahih.
So if you had someone
But you
saying,
do accept some da'if, nothing da'if
In
at all.
terms of for our
for law,
doctrine, not for law, not for doctrine.
not for
at
law
all.
and doctrine. So if someone came across a hadith attributed to the Prophet upon him be peace, we didn't know its transmission, we didn't know its isnad, we didn't know who heard it from the Prophet. Should we accept that as reliable
you don't accept
testimony?
that.
No, at all.
I couldn't. In the same way, we don't know who wrote the Gospel of John. We don't know when it was written. We have no isnad. We have no chain of narrations transmitted at all. We suddenly have this Gospel appearing at the end of the first century, making claims, but we can't verify them at all. So it's dodgy. But also, as the Quran says, it appeared to them he was crucified. So that's how the idea got around.
Because what does that mean? It appears because of that appearance, you now have Christianity.
Allah didn't specify.
Christianity is not the crucifixion of Jesus. Christianity is
the resurrection.
is what we believe. What Christians believe
resurrection. That's
that
the base
Jesus'
of our
death, Jesus' death on the cross was an atoning sacrifice for sin,
Yes.
and on the third day he rose from the dead.
Yes.
That his death is not the same as that. Because it's possible that Jesus was crucified. I mean, Islamically, lots of prophets died. I mean, it's not like.
So, for example,
it's not unbelievable.
John the Baptist,
John the Baptist.
he was killed, was beheaded.
Yeah.
Zachariah, he was killed. So we have no issue someone
It's
to
not
die.
the fact that he died we have a problem with. It's the fact that God says it didn't happen as a matter of fact, although it appears.
No, but that's my
Christianity is the significance you attribute to that as a sacrifice for sin. That
Atonement.
is Christianity.
Yeah.
Atonement.
Yes.
Not the death.
Yes.
It's
Not
the
the-
atonement.
the atonement.
Yes, I agree.
That's the problem.
But my question
That's
is,
the
if you
problem.
said that Allah made it appear, right? So the Jews, his disciples, they all saw what they thought was Jesus on the cross.
Not the disciple. We don't have eyewitness.
No, okay, hear me out. If the disciples were there, who could then claim that he died, then claim that he
But this-
raised, and then and then went around preaching, right? They must have seen something,
Can I
right?
go on to this
Yeah.
one? This is a good point because even in your Gospel of Mark, if you read it, it says that at the point just before Jesus was crucified, all the disciples scarpered.
Yeah.
They left. They were not present. And Mark says that there were women left who saw the crucifixion at a distance. They were not close up. Now this contradicts John, by the way, which is much later.
Because John says that he was at the foot of the cross.
Exactly.
Yes.
But according to Mark, all the disciples left the
They
scene And some women saw what they thought was the crucifixion at a distance.
Yeah,
so
at a distance.
even if Mark was true, and it could be in the sense of some appearances, it does not prove the crucifixion.
Because you're very intelligent, actually, and you're much more knowledgeable than me. The scattering, or when the disciples went away, was that not after he got arrested in the garden? Because he got arrested, then they ran away, or are you saying this was as he was?
I think it was. We need to check the chapter.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
But the point is that they weren't. But the point is they weren't present, and the gospel makes that clear. But some women were, and they saw Jesus crucified at a distance.
At a distance, which means they cannot see him clearly.
Exactly.
Yeah,
and the disciples were not there.
And the disciples were not there, so we don't have eyewitness.
Eyewitness.
Eyewitness who wrote the Bible from the Bible perspective. You understand? We don't have an eyewitness from the Bible perspective. And of course, it is in the interest of the Romans, it is in the interest of the Jews at that time that they have killed Jesus. It is in their interest, because they said, this is the God of the Christian, this is the one which is he committed heresy according to the Jews. So that's why, and according to the Romans, that this is, they have get rid of that. That's what until now they will they say they will go someone, they say we throw him in the sea, and we didn't see nothing, but they say we accept the narrative to say we throw him in the sea, as if they show the success. So they on the other side, they showed the success of what they wanted to achieve, but we don't have from the people who are alliance of Jesus that they have witnessed this. So that's the problem.
Well, you know what? You both have raised very, very interesting points from a Christian point of view. Now I have to go and do my homework. I have to go and do my research.
And I will add to you another point.
Go on.
Here, the other day he pointed, and I love it from Brother Paul, that he said about the Ignatius of Antioch. Yeah?
The what, sorry?
Ignatius.
Ignatius.
Sorry, Actually, what happens during his time, Ignatius he believed in the crucifixion of Jesus, no problem. But it exists during his time, but people who are Christian believe that he wasn't crucified during the time of his time. And let's hear him what he says about it.
Ignatius, I don't know if you have heard of Ignatius. I won't labour the point. So at the beginning of the 2nd century, he was taken to Rome to be eaten by lions. That's what happened. He was a martyr.
Yeah, fair enough.
And he was bishop of Antioch. Yeah, so he was like the 3rd or 4th after Peter. He was very senior in the church. But the Romans didn't like him. They sent him to be executed. He was. But on his way to Rome, he wrote 7 authentic letters that they're accepted now as really were by him. And one of them, interestingly, written to churches about the Christian faith, about how they shouldn't follow Judaism and all sorts of stuff.
Yeah.
And in one of them, he makes a very interesting comment about those who are tempted to follow Judaism. He said, don't follow that, follow Christianity. And that's the first time in recorded history, by the way, that the word Christianity has ever been used. So it's now a distinct religion from Judaism. And then he also criticizes those Christians who deny that Jesus was crucified.
So he called them Christians.
And this is the beginning of the 2nd century.
Fair enough, I didn't even
and
know
he
that.
says, no, this is not right. You must believe he was crucified. So this testifies to the fact that there were Christians
that believed that he wasn't
crucified.
Yeah, fair enough, okay.
Which means there are people during his time who are Christian
that he wasn't crucified. Fair enough, okay.
So meaning Muslim, they were not the first ones
I know. I'm not saying
to bring this, to bring this. And actually, who was in favor of crucifixion of Jesus are the people who believe in the redemption of Jesus, basically that's the atonement that he is as atonement. The other thing as well, autonomy, sorry, and the other one who believes, which is his enemies, that they have killed him, they have killed the God of the Christian, the Jews, and they laugh, and they do this. So that's the idea. Us as Muslims, we are in balance. We say no. Allah has mentioned clearly in the Quran that Allah has saved him, and actually he deserved to be saved, because in the night before in the garden, he was crying, praying, asking God
to save him. I remember.
So since he asked God,
so we believe God accepted his prayer.
God accepted the prayer.
Can I say there's another interesting confirmation of the Muslim view from the Old Testament? Actually, this argument is not often used. I'm not sure if it's been used before. Really, it's this.
There you go. You're welcome.
That in the Jewish Bible, what Christians call the Old Testament, there is some talk of the Messiah to come,
yes,
a son of David. So if you like, a king, like King David. And he's always a human being. He's never a divine being, by the way. But never is this Messiah in the Jewish scriptures ever spoken of as someone who would be killed and die as a sacrifice for sin.
What about the Psalms that says they pierce my hands and feet?
Well, just come to it in a second. So this is what I'm saying. The belief is in Judaism then and Judaism now that the Messiah, when he comes, of course the Messiah has already come, but the Jews reject him.
Yes.
But that's a different subject. The Messiah would be victorious over his enemies. He would not be horribly tortured and crucified to death. This is alien to Jewish belief now and in the Bible. Now, this is interesting. This is exactly what Muslims believe. Muslims agree with the Jewish Bible about the Messiah, although they don't agree that he's Jesus, but that he will be victorious when he returns. He was not horribly tortured and crucified by his enemies. And this is the Islamic view as well.
And he will be king. He will be a leader.
And he will be a king. He'll be a king.
Jesus is king, though.
What?
Jesus is king.
He will come back as a king. Yeah,
he's coming. No, he's king and he's coming back as king.
But the Christian belief is...
that's the Christian belief I'm saying.
The Christian belief is not supported by the Jewish Bible. Now, you're going to suggest some possible texts.
Well,
we can go through them.
Psalms 22.
Psalm 22.
Which is what Jesus was quoting when he was on the cross. Father,
we don't believe it's in the cross and we don't know these documents. Eyewitnesses so much later.
Yeah.
But the point is, if you read Psalm 22, it says a Psalm of David.
Yes, but he's prophesying.
No, hang on. If we look at the Psalm, what it says, rather than saying,
what does it say?
Right. We need to. Do we have a?
I've got it in my Bible.
I was going to bring a Bible today. I thought, I won't need it.
No, we have. No, he has a Bible.
Oh, lovely. Please don't tell me it's a King James version.
It's a New King James.
Oh, that's all right.
It's the old King James. I don't like the English.
It's not easy to read. Easy to read. Okay. So Psalm 22. Let me look it up on my iPhone as well. Because the King James version is a
There
bit,
we go. Psalm 22 right here.
Okay.
I like this discussion. And by the way, our friend here is respectful.
Can I just say, it's an absolute honor to meet you because I've watched all your videos on YouTube.
Honor to meet you too.
Thank you.
You say I'm not always aggressive.
No. Honestly, thank you. God bless you. Believe me, honestly. God bless you.
Can I just read out for the benefit of everyone?
Yeah,
this is the New International Version, which is a bit more modern than that.
That's fine.
This is an evangelical Bible.
Yes.
So Psalm 22, a Psalm of David.
Yes.
Now this matters. You can see it there.
Yeah.
This matters because this is David speaking.
Yeah.
This really matters.
Yes, I know.
If we're going to take Scripture seriously,
we need to know who's talking.
When it says who it's by.
Of course.
All right. It says. So David is saying this. My God, why have you forsaken me? Why are you so far from saving me? So far from my cries of anguish. My God, I cry out, but you do not answer. By night I find no rest. I am a worm, not a man, etc. So the point is, this is.
Keep reading. Because it's from 16 to 18 that we find out.
You want me to read 31 verses? Okay.
16. Just go from 16.
Okay, just go from 16 to just that here, so we can actually see what David is talking about.
Before, I want to make 2 points before we read the whole thing. Firstly, this is not prophecy.
How do we know it's not prophecy?
Because it's not saying it is prophecy. It has to say it's prophecy to be prophecy. We can't just say, I decided it's
everywhere in the
prophecy.
Bible everywhere in the Bible says this is prophecy and it prophesies, right?
This is David speaking about
being prophecy. It means something from God, which means...
No, I understand, but listen to what you just said. It has to say that it's a prophecy for it to be a prophecy. That's what you just said.
No, it's not. Well, it's not claiming to be prophecy, but also it doesn't read like prophecy.
Okay, let's read it.
Come closer. Look this path.
So... Yeah. David is saying that he feels abandoned by God.
Yes.
Okay. This is not a prophecy about the future. He's not talking about the Messiah. He's not talking about a future event. He's not talking about someone else. He's talking about his own experience. David's experience.
I love that.
All right.
Stick by that.
Stick by this. Okay, so David himself is
14. To 18. It's 14 to 18. And if you want, I can just read that for you.
So the first thing is, when we understand who the author is, this is really important, we read it in context.
Yes.
Okay, so we will, as it says, a plea for deliverance from suffering and hostility by David.
Yeah.
It's nothing to do with Jesus.
Okay, read it.
So, I will read it. My God,
No, 14 to 18.
I'll read it all.
Okay, read it all, yeah.
Again. My God, remember David is speaking this, not anyone else, not
David
a future prophecy. Yes. My God, why have you forsaken me? Why are you so far from helping me from the words of my groaning? Oh my God, I cry by day, but you do not answer, by night, but find no rest. Yet you are holy, enthroned on the praises of Israel. In you our ancestors trusted. They trusted and delivered them, and you delivered them. To you, I'm so sorry. To you they cried and were saved. You okay?
No, it is.
In you they trusted and were not put to shame. But I am a worm and not a man, scorned by others and despised by the people. All who see me mock me. They sneer at me. They shake their heads. Poor David. Poor David. Commit your cause to the Lord. Let him deliver. Let him rescue the one he delights. This is inverted commas. This is the crowd saying this to David. Yet, and now back to David. Yet it was you who took me from the womb. You kept me safe from my mother's breast. On you I was cast from my birth. And since my mother bore me, you have been my God. So David, has a God. Yes. Not your belief about Jesus, obviously. Okay. Do not be far from me, for trouble is near, and there is no one to help. Okay. It's just a shouting. Many bulls encircle me. Strong bulls at Bashan surround me. They open wide their mouths at me like a ravening and roaring lion.
Right, now listen, this is the chapter.
Okay.
Listen, go.
I thought the next verse, 14. I am poured out like water and all my bones are out of joint. My heart is like wax. It is melted within my breast. My mouth is dried up like a potsherd and my tongue sticks to my jaws. Yep. You lay me in the dust of death.
Yep, keep going.
Okay.
I'm just saying.
I don't need to be encouraged.
I'm just keep going.
Just be quiet.
I'm about to stop. Whose idea was it to read it all the way through?
Me.
Mine.
Oh, sorry, yours. Go on.
For dogs are all around me. A company of evildoers encircles me. They bound my hands and feet. I can count all my bones. They stare and gloat over me. They divide my clothes among themselves. And for my clothing, they cast lots.
So yours says bound. Mine says they pierced my hands and my feet.
That's not in the Hebrew. See, that's the problem with the King James Version. It Christianizes Old Testament prophecies. It's a serious point because this is the translation that what's the word? Tarif in Arabic. The way corruption of the word.
Tarif. Distortion.
This is an example of tarif.
So it's not in the
distortion.
It's not in the Hebrew
or the Greek.
It's in Hebrew.
No, I'm saying is it not in the in the original Hebrew or Greek?
David was speaking Hebrew.
Okay, the manuscripts that we have from how we translated this.
That's why the problem.
This is the original. No. The Hebrew Bible. Sorry, the Greek Bible.
I want to go back and read the Hebrew. That's what I mean.
The Greek Bible is not always a very good translation. For example, Professor James Barr at Oxford University, who's a professor of Hebrew, has often said that the Septuagint is a poor translation of the Hebrew Bible. So at least.
Why does he say that?
Because it is. He's compared the Masoretic text, the Dead Sea Scrolls, for example, with the Septuagint, and he's found often that there are big differences between the two. So should we follow the original, or at least the Masoretic, or follow the Greek, the later distorted? I think we should follow the Greek.
You see here.
David, how you doing?
How you doing? I see you're here with my favorite da'i, Paul Williams, and I see the two of them.
Come join us.
You might.
By the way, we generally don't discuss with him.
You don't like him? Why, Sheikh? Why? He's a good
guy.
guy.
I'm really
He's a good guy.
We have done.
Come on, it'll be a good conversation.
Do you want to move with him?
I would love for all of us to
have a conversation. Listen. We had a lovely conversation. We have a lovely conversation before he came.
He's whispering now.
Listen. We had a lovely conversation before he arrived. Yes. So if you wanted to do that, we'll tell you go in peace.
Exactly.
Well, that's it. No.
That's it.
If he joins in,
if you want to join him, we're done.
Okay.
Up to you. Listen, you were respectful. We respected you. Did I disrespect you in any way? Yeah. We had a very beautiful conversation, correct?
Yes, of course.
Yeah. So that's how it is.
So you don't want to have a conversation with my brother as well?
No.
All right. Well, you know what? I respect it. Thank you so much. I'm going to do my homework, by the way.
All right. Good.
And I will talk to the camera.
All right. Good to see you. Anyway.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. As I mentioned to you, and as we said, this is an honor I was talking to you.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much.
What's your name? Romario.
Nice
to meet you.
Yeah, good to
see you next Sunday.
Yeah, good to meet you. So going back.
So the point is
So both of you da'is.
Okay, well, we're not
simply
going
because I appeared.
So as we were saying, the King James Version is the most distorted, Christianized translation. So what I use here is the New Revised Standard Version, which is the gold standard of academic translation.
So they will go back to the Hebrew one, and then they translate it based on the Hebrew one.
The Hebrew Bible It doesn't use later translations.
It doesn't use because throughout the time they translated into Greek initially, and then after that into Latin, and then into
So
English.
modern Bibles have gone from Hebrew to Greek to English.
Yeah, yeah.
So there's so many layers above
so
the
many
original.
layers.
Whereas Muslims, we usually go back to the Arabic when we're not using translations. So we know the original word itself.
It was, alhamdulillah, it was interesting, and actually we had a beautiful conversation with the guy here.
Yeah. He always undermines discussion.
But at least
Anyway, it was great. Thank you for inviting me along.
Jazakallah khair. All right, jazakallah khair. All right.
Run.
All right, jazakallah khair. Now the road all, and bless you all. Jazakallah khair for for the listening, and it was amazing by a good discussion with the brother, and we had with our friend that he came here. Anyway, thank you so much, and we'll see you inshallah ta'ala. Hopefully we'll have a bit of debates than these hate preachers.
All right. Yes, I'm a hate preacher.
I know.